Hi, welcome to BBC News. It's Friday. I'm Victoria Derbyshire and here are the headlines. Prince William launches a scathing attack on the BBC, saying his mum, Princess Diana, was failed not just by one rogue reporter, but by BBC leaders who looked the other way.
It brings indescribable sadness to know that the BBC's failures contributed significantly to her fear, paranoia and isolation that I remember from those final years with her.
Prince William also says he feels let down by the BBC and says the organisation has let you down. Do you agree with him? You can message me on Instagram or Twitter, it's @VicDerbyshire, or email me victoria@bbc.co.uk. Also today, Prince Harry says the ripple effect of a culture of exploitation ultimately took his mum's life. In a documentary with Oprah, he said he drank too much and took drugs to deal with losing her. A ceasefire between Israel and the Palestinian militant group Hamas comes into effect, ending 11 days of violence which killed nearly 250 people, mostly on the Palestinian side. Here, police say rioters who threw bricks at houses and torched cars in Swansea will be met with robust action. A major clean-up is underway.
3, 2, 1...
And the return of Park Run on the 5th of June has been delayed after less than half its venues approved the return of the 5-kilometre runs. Good morning. Prince William has condemned failures at the BBC 25 years ago for contributing significantly to his mother, Princess Diana's fear, paranoia and isolation, and said that the corporation had let down his mum, his family and the public. It comes after an independent inquiry found a panorama interview conducted by reporter Matt Wiesler was obtained by deception, and the BBC failed to adequately investigate concerns raised at the time. In the 127-page report, Lord Dyson, who oversaw the inquiry, said Martin Bashir was deceitful in the way he obtained the interview, that the BBC's own investigation at the time was woefully ineffective, and that the BBC covered up what it actually knew about how the interview was obtained. The BBC's current Director General accepted that the organisation's behaviour fell far short of what you would expect. Here is the full statement from Prince William.
I would like to thank Lord Dyson and his team for the report. It is welcome that the BBC accepts Lord Dyson's findings in full, which are extremely concerning. That BBC employees lied and used fake documents to obtain the interview with my mother, made lurid and false claims about the royal family, which played on her fears and fueled paranoia, displayed woeful incompetence when investigating complaints and concerns about the programme, and were evasive in their reporting to the media and covered up what they knew from their internal investigation. It is my view that the deceitful way the interview was obtained substantially influenced what my mother said. The interview was a major contribution to making my parents' relationship worse and has since hurt countless others. It brings indescribable sadness to know that the BBC's failures contributed significantly to her fear, paranoia and isolation that I remember from those final years with her. But what saddens me most is that if the BBC had properly investigated the complaints and concerns first raised in 1995, my mother would have known that she had been deceived. She was failed not just by a rogue reporter, but by leaders at the BBC who looked the other way rather than asking the tough questions. It is my firm view that this panorama programme holds no legitimacy and should never be aired again. It effectively established a false narrative which for over a quarter of a century has been commercialised by the BBC and others. This settled narrative now needs to be addressed by the BBC and anyone else who has written or intends to write about these events. In an era of fake news, public service broadcasting and a free press have never been more important. These failings, identified by investigative journalists, not only let my mother down and my family down, they let the public down too.
Really interested to hear from you if you feel let down by this. I've got so many messages from you. I'll read some in a moment. Prince Harry also gave a statement from the US. This is what he said. The ripple effect of a culture of exploitation and unethical practices ultimately took her life. To those who've taken some form of accountability, thank you for owning it. This is the first step forwards towards justice and truth. Yet what deeply concerns me is that practices like these, and even worse, are still widespread today. Then and now, it's bigger than one outlet, one network, or one publication. Here's analysis by our media editor, Amal Rajan. His report has some flashing images in it.
Watched by almost 23 million people, Martin Bashire's panorama shocked the world. Yesterday, we learnt the real story, behind the story, after a report laid bare a catalogue of failures. Lord Dyson's independent report, commissioned by the BBC, says Bashir was devious and dishonest, lying repeatedly to secure the interview and explain his conduct. He says the BBC investigation into how the interview was obtained was woefully ineffective. And he adds, without justification, the BBC fell short of the high standards of integrity and transparency, which are its hallmark, including by covering up press logs. Crucial information that it knew but didn't give to the media. Princess Diana and Prince Charles were already separated at the time of the interview. Early in September 1995, Bashir met Earl Spencer. He showed him fake bank statements to suggest payments had been made to informants around Diana. Earl Spencer introduced Bashir to Diana. This constituted a serious breach of the guidelines at the time. The interview aired, but soon journalists at the Daily Mail Group and elsewhere started asking questions. A BBC investigation led by Tony Hall, later Director General, cleared Bashir. But Earl Spencer was not approached, a big mistake according to Dyson. In August 1996, Prince Charles and Princess Diana were divorced. She died a year later. And in Panorama last night, Earl Spencer explained the effect that Bashir's deception had.
The first statements that I was shown, the first fake bank statements, were to get my trust. The second set was to get to Diana, and then to get the interview. So it's a very clear chain from anyone logical's point of view. The irony is that I met Martin Bashir on the 31st of August, 1995, because exactly 2 years later she died. And I do draw a line between the two events. This is a young girl in her mid-30s who has lived this extraordinarily turbulent and difficult time in the public eye. She didn't know who to trust, and in the end, when she died 2 years later, she was without any form of real protection.
Martin Bashir won a BAFTA for the programme. He left the BBC last week, having been rehired in 2016. He has long argued that Diana would have agreed to speak to him without the fake bank statements. In a statement he said, "I apologise then and I do so again now over the fact that I asked for bank statements to be mocked up. But I absolutely stand by the evidence I gave a quarter of a century ago, and again more recently." Lord Hall of Birkenhead, who as the director of BBC News conducted the investigation into Bashir's conduct, and was until last August the Director General, has apologised and said that he was wrong to give Bashir the benefit of the doubt. The BBC has written to members of the royal family to apologise for what happened, and it says it has no plans to run Martin Bashir's panorama in full again. Amal Rajan, BBC News.
I've been asking you this morning if you agree with Prince William when he said in his statement to the cameras last night that the BBC has let you down over this. This is what you are saying. Pauline says, did Mr Bashir do wrong? Yes, and the investigation was poor at best, but this was over 25 years ago. I hope the BBC are not further punished for this. Michelle says the story was there to be told, but how the BBC got the story was disgraceful. Mimi says, wait until Prince William finds out his dad had an affair with Camilla during their entire relationship, that the royals removed her protection and briefed against her to the tabloids, who pursued her remorselessly. And Niels says, I think the BBC has let itself down in recent years, this constant search for balance where sometime none exists. If you want to get in touch, you're very welcome. It's at Vic Derbyshire on Twitter or Instagram, or you can email victoria@bbc.co.uk. I have many more messages from you. I'll read them through the morning. We're going to talk now to Matt Wiesler. He's a graphic designer. He said he was asked to forge bank statements. You heard about them in Emol's report. Asked by Martin Bashir to forge those bank statements to help get the interview with Princess Diana. Mr. Wiesler, good morning to you. First of all, how do you respond to what Prince William and Prince Harry have said overnight?
It's a long time coming that someone of that stature says it the way it is. And yeah, I'm very, very pleased that they've come forward, because it is adding incredible weight to getting to the bottom of this whole saga. And, you know, people like me have been waiting for a long time for vindication and for the truth to come out.
Tell our audience how you have been affected by the events of 25 years ago, how your personal life, how your career has been affected.
Well, at the time when I mocked up these statements for Martin, I was in transition from leaving the BBC. I was in my notice period, and I agreed to set up a production company with some other colleagues. And yeah, it sort of stopped all of that dead in its tracks.
Why?
Because unbeknown to us, Tony Hall had hatched a plan with many other unknown faces in the BBC that we weren't to work for the BBC again. And we had specifically left the BBC to set up a business to work for the BBC as our main client, because we had so many great colleagues and connections there. But I certainly never got a job from the BBC. My business partner, Patrick, got some, but it was a very tough time. And it was a tough time for 2 or 3 years until I threw in the towel and gave up.
What do you want from the BBC now? Tony Hall was the head of news back then. Subsequently, he became the big boss of the BBC, the Director General. He left last year. What is it you want from the current Director General?
I just want... It is almost as if the BBC are currently frightened of people like me, because we do have grievances and we have been wronged. And there are many of us to do with this. The producers that I reported to were thrown out of the BBC. You know, other people were threatened. It was a real culture of intimidation at the BBC. And I was blacklisted, which I only found out 24 years later. But it sort of explained to me why things went seriously wrong for me. Because, you know, I was an award-winning graphic designer, and nobody ever responded to my calls or got back to me with the jobs they could have awarded me.
Mr. Wiesler, what contact have you had from the BBC after Lord Dyson's report was published yesterday? And is that enough?
I've had no personal contact. I've had generic emails signed with a squiggle. It could have been Tim Davie. I hope it was.
He's the current boss.
But nothing that's, you know, I put it in my statement yesterday. I said it's meaningless like that. After 25 years of being mistreated in a major way, I mean, the impact on my life, my family life, absolutely everything. When you've had a very successful career and great prospects, and you end up leaving London, moving away, getting away, and never hearing from the BBC ever, it was really, really tough. Yeah. And I haven't spoken ever about it. And yeah, I mean, I don't know what I expect from the BBC.
What would you like? You've had an email with a squiggled signature, which you hope you say is from Tim Davie. We've just lost your vision, Mr. Wiesler, but do keep talking. What would you like?
Sorry, I would like Tim Davie, who is the Director General now. And I have to say one very important point, that certain untouchable people have been swept under the carpet and are still being swept under the carpet in all of this. Let's not forget that John Birt was in charge of the BBC when all of this happened. And even though he wasn't head of news, he was head of the BBC. And he was, I'm sure, also dealing with the fallout of the biggest interview News and Current Affairs had ever done. And he has never been mentioned. So I would like to speak to Tim Davie, the now Director General, in person, exactly about that. Why to this day it looks like the important people are being covered up. Certain people get an apology yesterday, a public verbal apology on television. Other people don't. I need to talk and find out why this is still happening, because I can tell you from my point of view, every day this goes on and this sort of cover up carries on, and this trickle feeding of the truth. The public are losing confidence in the BBC's ability to do its job.
Briefly, Mr. Wiesler, are you considering suing the BBC for loss of earnings?
I don't want to discuss that here. I haven't even thought about it. I've got a business. I've got enough money to get by. I will see my lawyers next week because they've helped me throughout Dyson, and we'll have a good long session. Okay. I don't know what's going to happen. But currently, I'm quite angry. I still am quite angry because there seems to be an inability to deal with all of these people such as me.
Well, thank you very much for talking to us. Thank you. Matt Wiesler, who is a graphic designer, who was asked to forge those bank statements by Martin Bashir. And as you heard, clearly he wants the current boss of the BBC to pick up the phone and talk to him. As to whether you are losing trust in the BBC, thank you for your many messages. Niels says, actually, I've read that one, I beg your pardon. Dawn says, I just feel sorry for William and Harry in all this. Two boys who witnessed their mother's paranoia and isolation, then lost her so tragically. They were so young and it obviously continues to haunt them. On Twitter, Blue Moose Books says, Prince Charles was having an affair with Camilla. That is where the blame should lie. The BBC were wrong, but William's father's adultery and the palace's acceptance of his behaviour is at the heart of this. Niesa says, I think all news stations are letting everyone down by not reporting the truth, full stop. Mimi says the BBC methods were wrong, but the royal family and Charles used and mistreated Diana in a cruel way. One more, you make it sound like it was Bashir and BBC producers who stripped Diana of her titles and police protection and briefed against her in the press. Let us not forget who actually threw her to the wolves. Thank you for those. It's at Vic Derbyshire on Twitter or Instagram, or you can email victoria@bbc.co.uk. Right, let's talk now to Tom Mangold, who was a reporter for Panorama when the Diana interview was secured all those years ago. Hello, Mr. Mangold.
Good morning.
What's your reaction to Prince William's statement?
Well, my reaction to Prince William's statement is what a terrible thing to happen to the BBC. But can I just say, Victoria, this story is going in the wrong direction. It is a complete waste of time to continue making Martin Bashir the scoundrel of the century. It's a complete waste of time because, as you well know, every single reporter on Panorama has his producer, and the producer is totally responsible for what the reporter does. There are at least 8 firewalls between a rogue reporter and the Director General, who is the head of News and Current Affairs. And having read Dyson last night from cover to cover, I've reached the conclusion that it is absolutely inconceivable that all the people in the editorial chain between Bashir and the Director General, that they're all twerps. They're not twerps. I worked for every single one of them. I worked for Steve Hewlett, you know, a sharp guy, a very sharp guy. Tim Garden was my editor. Tim Souter I worked for. Tony Hall was in my life for, 30 years. And I worked for John Birt. You put these people together, they've got brains that will boil water. Are you trying to tell me that they were unable to uncover all the pathological lies of Martin Bashir.
Well, the answer to that is, of course they weren't unable to. So what point are you making, Mr. Mangold?
Well, the point I'm making is that it seems to me that if you read Dyson in detail, that there must have been, and I am the opposite of a conspiracy theorist, I really am, there must have been an agreement that once the terrible scandal emerged, the BBC could not admit what had happened. I cannot believe that the investigation conducted by Tony Hall and some person called Anne Sloman was as bad as Dyson says, unless they wanted it to be bad.
Okay.
I see in Dyson, time and time again, evidence of what one would have to call a conspiracy to keep quiet.
Okay, well, it would be good to, I mean, I take your point, but it would be good to see some hard, fast evidence.
Well, let me give you evidence.
Let
me give you evidence. It's quite simple. The press officer for Panorama, Alison Jackson, was instructed to lie to the press about the truth of the Bashir scandal. That is an appalling thing for the BBC to do. When three of us went to see Steve Hewlett, we were the first people who knew about the forgeries. We went to see the editor of Panorama and we had a discussion. We walked in, we warned him what we had heard happened, and his response was, "This is none of your effing business." After we had seen him, he then said to his deputy editor, immediately he said, "There are the jealous colleagues who want to stop transmission of the film." So we left his office with targets on our back, and the BBC press office was instructed to tell lies and to have omissions of the truth.
Okay.
Now, the big question in my mind is, every single Panorama reporter, whether he be a senior like me or a junior like Martin, has a producer. And you know, Victoria, you have a producer. I can't go to the men's room without getting clearance from my producer. He or she takes full responsibility for my output. From beginning to end, the BBC has never, ever mentioned the name of Martin Bashir's producer. And I think in many ways, it's unfair to excoriate Bashir all the time, because you have all these firewalls between a rogue reporter and the transmission.
All right.
Are you telling me it's a coincidence that every single one of them failed?
Thank you very much, Tom Mangold, former senior reporter at Panorama. Let's talk to our media correspondent, David Silito, who is here. Now, the Dyson report has not drawn a line under this, as some might have hoped, although Prince Harry at least said thank you for owning it to the BBC. A mid-term review of the BBC Charter is due next year. The Culture Secretary tweeted yesterday the government would have to consider further governance reforms. That was repeated by a Cabinet Minister on the radio this morning. Is there any risk to the current boss of the BBC and the renewal of the Charter more widely?
Big questions. There are many questions about command and control in all of this. There is what Martin Bashir did. There is the investigation in the 1990s, woefully ineffective. There is the fact that it's taken 25 years to come to light. And also, how did it happen and how can you prove it won't happen again? So those are all big questions. How do you show that it won't happen again? Because as Lord Dyson said, this is all about the integrity and transparency of the BBC. Well, Prince Harry said this is at least maybe one step forward towards justice and truth. And it's not just the BBC who maybe face questions about methods, but the focus is very clearly today on the BBC today. When Prince William made his statement, he was not talking about 25 years ago. He was very clearly looking at the BBC today, asking questions of it. Yesterday was the day of a formal round of apologies, apology to the palace for the lurid and untrue claims that Martin Bashir made about members of the royal household. So the questions there will be the people who are essentially affected, such as Mr. Wiesler and the people in the royal household. They'll have questions to be asked about that. But I think the wider ones are, how do you ensure that the public trusts the BBC, that this won't happen again? And that's a much more difficult question for the Director General.
Yeah. I mean, some have said there needs to be another inquiry, why Martin Bashir was rehired by the BBC a couple of years ago, why whistleblowers were treated so badly all those years ago. Some say the police should now be involved because there were forged documents which Martin Bashir has apologised for. And then there's this sort of wider question of should there be more reform of the BBC by the government? Where do you think this goes next, David?
I think there'll be the personal questions of the people directly affected. I think that will be on people's minds because these were lies that Martin Bashir said, according to Lord Dyson's report. And for many people, Prince William said this fed Princess Diana's fear, paranoia and distrust. And she believed that the people around her could not be trusted. So this will have had an impact on their lives. So that will be the first thing. The wider question of how the BBC addresses this issue of trust, well, that's a much, much wider question, and it's a more difficult one to actually focus on. But there will be questions about that investigation in the 1990s, what happens again if a similar situation happens, and how can you ensure that any further investigation won't be woefully ineffective?
Well, people should just tell the truth. That would be a good start, would it not? Thank you very much, David. As to whether you have lost trust in the BBC, Prince William, as you know, said in his TV statement last night that the BBC's let his family down and let you, the public, down. This from Imogen. William's mum and family were let down by Bashir and the programme makers, but were the public? I don't think so. The tabloids going after the BBC for this have got some balls. They hounded Diana for years and they're now trying to appear whiter than white. Visha says, I don't feel let down. Prince William should be more upset about his dad's affair because that had such an impact on his mother. And Joshua says, forging bank statements to drive a woman into a state of paranoia in the desperate hope of getting a gory interview, and the BBC desperately trying to sweep everything under the carpet. Yeah, it's pretty appalling. Thank you for those. Do keep them coming in. It's at Vic Derbyshire on Twitter and Instagram, or you can email victoria@bbc.co.uk. Meanwhile, Prince Harry has described how he binge drank and took drugs as a way of dealing with the loss of his mum. He was speaking in the first part of a TV series he's produced with Oprah, which looks at mental health issues. Our royal correspondent Sarah Campbell has this.
This is where Prince Harry said he was happiest, in the army, with no special treatment, wearing the same uniform as everybody else. It was carrying out royal duties that he now says caused him severe anxiety and panic attacks. To help him cope, he turned to drink.
I was willing to drink, I was willing to take drugs, I was willing to try and do the things that made me feel less like I was feeling. But I slowly became aware that, okay, I wasn't drinking Monday to Friday, but I would probably drink a week's worth in one day on a Friday or a Saturday night. And I would find myself drinking not because I was enjoying it, but because I was trying to mask something.
In perhaps an early warning sign of future problems, it emerged in 2002 that Prince Charles had sent a teenage Harry to meet staff and patients at a drugs rehabilitation centre after he admitted smoking cannabis at the Highgrove estate. Understandably, Harry attributes much of his pain to the very public loss of his mother when he was just shy of his 13th birthday.
For me, the thing I remember the most was the sound of the horses' hooves going along the pavement, along the Mall, the red brick road. By this point, both of us were in shock. It was like I was outside of my body and just walking along doing what was expected of me. Showing 1/10 of the emotion that everybody else was showing.
Charles.
So this is my mum. You never even met her.
It has been a difficult few months for the royal family, who are also having to come to terms with Harry's determination to share his pain with the world. Again, they too have come in for criticism for what Harry sees as their failure to support him and Meghan.
I felt completely helpless. I thought my family would help, but every single ask, request, warning, whatever it is, just got met with total silence or total neglect.
Now living in California with his family, after years of not talking about his grief and trauma, Harry firmly believes discussing his mental health battles publicly will help others. Sarah Campbell, BBC News.
Let's talk to Afua Adom, who's a writer and journalist. What do you think of some of these startling revelations?
Again, shocking, Victoria, and things that I don't think we expected, or maybe perhaps we did, because of the interview that went out with Meghan and Harry earlier on this year with Oprah Winfrey. Harry talking about drinking, about potential drug use there as well, and saying that he's been in therapy for 4 years now, and the primary cause of that was the death of his mother, which I don't think anybody is very surprised by. Again, talking about asking the royal family for help, seeing GPs, practitioners, some holistic practitioners as well. You know, I think it's the repeated calls and the repeated asks for help that I think some people will find surprising, or maybe not surprising, that both him and Meghan at a time went to the farm, as it were, said that we need help with our mental health, and that was ignored and denied, much like it was for his own mother, Diana. It seems that perhaps what he went through, or what he has been going through, mirrors what she went through at the time as well, that she felt trapped, that she asked for help with her mental health, and that wasn't given. You know, and I think it's really, really, really good that he is being so honest about his mental health journey. You know, this whole series is about different parts of that mental health journey, about saying it out loud, about asking for help, about talking to people, about the good a community can do you over the 5 parts of this whole documentary series, The Me You Can't See. And that is what's really, really important. And yes, we can focus on Prince Harry perhaps talking about his father and his grandmother and his grandfather. But in fact, I think what we should focus on is him talking about this mental health journey. It's him talking about his experience of grief and how he's going through that. And hopefully that can inspire other people to do the same thing.
Well, certainly people will be able to relate. Some people will be able to relate very much to him saying, look, he tried to deal with it. He was self-medicating with drink and drugs, as people do, as we know when they're going through struggles. As you know, too, there will be others who say, too much oversharing now, this is enough.
Oh, yes, there'll be lots of people that will be saying that. There'll be lots of people that will be saying perhaps he's had too much therapy, or he's playing up to his victimhood. But this is his own experience, and he is owning that, and he's going through it in the way that he sees fit. And I think if he can use his platform in this way to be talking about mental health and be talking about his mental health issues, to bring that to the fore, to be campaigning on that and helping others, that is a form of service, with or without the royal family. And, you know, I think, of course, there will be people who are sick of him oversharing, who are tired of hearing about it, but this is his journey. And frankly, if they don't want to hear about it, they can simply not read that article in the newspaper or not watch the documentary. It really is that simple.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks for talking to us. Thank you. Right, hopefully we've got the sport now, and here's Mike in Salford at the BBC Sports Centre. Morning.
Yes, good morning, Victoria. Thanks very much. Well, we start with the golf in the sunny South Carolina, where Rory McIlroy teed off as favourite to win the US PGA tournament, one of golf's majors. And remember, he did win the last time it was held on this course some 9 years ago. But he did warn himself that history wouldn't really count for much, and so it proved. He told himself at the first tee not to think too hard about making a great start, to ignore the ocean and other hazards, but the mindset didn't work as his first tee shot went into the water. Not that he could work out for a while where on earth it had gone. Cut adrift there. It led to a frustrating opening day. He has it all to do later on. 3 over par, 8 shots off the lead. And that is held by the Canadian Corey Connors. But as far as the Brits are concerned, well, Englishman Sam Horsfield is just 2 strokes off the lead, and Scotland's Martin Laird is just a further shot back. He said he attacked the course and didn't want to give it too much respect, even if it is the longest course in major history. So that's a rather brave approach, but it worked. In football, it feels so good to be back home for Charlie Adam. Towards the end of his long and illustrious career, the former Liverpool star is now playing for his hometown in Dundee. And at 35, he scored the goal that gives the Championship club a great chance of getting back into the Premiership. They won 2-1 in the promotion playoff first leg, beating Kilmarnock, who themselves hoping to extend their 28-year stay in the Premiership. The second leg is on Monday. Chelsea's women bounced back from their Champions League final defeat in some style. They romped to a 3-0 win over Everton to reach the quarter-finals. In the FA Cup, Drew Spence with the header which made it comfortable in the end. So with the WSL title and the League Cup already secured, Emma Hayes' side are still on for a domestic treble. Now, fresh from celebrating his third Premier League title with Manchester City, Pep Guardiola's eyes are now firmly on the Champions League final. City will face Chelsea in Porto next Saturday, and he'll be aiming to add the only trophy that's missing from his collection since arriving in Manchester. And he's been speaking to our very own Dan Walker.
For us to be in the final Champions League, never been before, well, never been semi-finals, but once now, never been final is already. But for sure we want to win it, because the best way to prepare the final is to be ready in the games. Still you have to play, but it's a dream come true again. So yeah, for this club, never been before, going to the final Champions League is a dream. So hopefully we can do good performance.
And you can see more of that interview on tomorrow's Football Focus on BBC One. Now, City's neighbours Manchester United also have the chance of European glory next week. They play Villarreal in the Europa League final. I'll tell you that again. Europa League final. Now, Sir Alex Ferguson twice won the European Cup as United manager, and speaking ahead of a premiere of a film about his life and career, he told us that United's stardust quality might just make the difference.
Villarreal, I think they're a decent team. I saw them against Arsenal. I thought they played well. But in saying that, our boys have been playing well. You know, they've got match winners in their team. That's a good thing. Cavani and Hernandez and Greenwood, they're winners. These boys win games for you. And I think going into the final, you got that kind of support system in your team. It gives you a chance.
Now, Formula One has become a billionaire boys' club, according to the seven-time world champion Lewis Hamilton. He made the comments to a Spanish newspaper with the backdrop of the glitz and glamour, of Monaco ahead of one of the most famous weekends of the Grand Prix season. So he said there's no way he could now break into the sport from his working-class background if he was trying to do so in this current age. Hamilton was third quickest in practice yesterday ahead of final practice and qualifying. That's tomorrow. The Olympics, it seemed, can't come soon enough for Britain's swimmers after another gold at the European Swimming Championships in Budapest. Adam Peaty says he's even more excited now after the success for the mixed relay team that also included James Guy, Kathleen Dawson and Anna Hopkin. They won the mixed 4x100 metre medley and set a new European record as well. And Freya Anderson did well. She took bronze in the 200 metres freestyle. So far in this sports desk, we've seen lovely sunshine in the south of France and South Carolina. But as we know, the UK weather is rather fickle. It's like February and May, isn't it? Fans returned to county cricket grounds yesterday following the easing of COVID restrictions. And this is what they were greeted with. Yep, remarkably, there was at least some play in all the matches, but most were affected by the rain and miserable conditions. So that, after waiting for so long to go and enjoy some county cricket in what should be late spring sunshine. That's all the sport for now, Victoria.
Cheers, mate. Thank you very much. This news just coming into us here. The Metropolitan Police have said they will assess the contents of Lord Dyson's report on the BBC's Panorama interview with Diana to, quote, ensure there is no significant new evidence after previously deciding not to begin a criminal investigation. Scotland Yard say in a statement released in the last few minutes, they had determined back in March that it was not appropriate to begin a criminal investigation into allegations of unlawful activity in connection with the 1995 interview. But should any significant new evidence emerge, it would be assessed. And now they say, following the publication of Lord Dyson's report, we will assess its contents to ensure there is no significant new evidence. That just in from the Met Police. I've been asking you this morning if you agree with Prince William that the corporation has let you down over this. Samantha says it was the institution of the monarchy which let Diana down. Yes, the BBC was out of order with the interview, but how the monarchy treated Diana back then, absolutely abhorrent. Alan says, to be honest, surely the years of cover-up and subsequent whitewash investigation by the BBC with regard to Jimmy Savile was far worse than this. JR says Charles let Diana and William and Harry down by having an affair with Camilla. And one more for now. Diana herself didn't lie in the interview, did she? The methods to get her there were appalling, but let's not pretend that somehow makes Charles a loving husband and the royal family free of guilt for how they treated her. Right, let's talk now to Conservative MP Damian Collins, who was chair of the Digital Culture, Media and Sports Select Committee in Parliament from 2017 to 2019. Good morning, sorry. Good morning to you, Mr Collins. I want to ask you a broader question about the BBC. As you know, it has many political enemies, some in your party. certain British newspapers. How much is now a moment of risk for the BBC, do you think?
Well, I think the BBC needs to look at the Dyson report, I think, for what it is, which is an example of how, when the BBC was asked to investigate a difficult issue regarding one of its own journalists, it failed to do so. It failed to give the BBC board, the BBC chairman and the Director General the information they needed to decide whether to act in this case and take further action against Martin Bashir. And what we should be concerned about today is, would those failings occur again if a similar problem had to be investigated? And I mean, in the report, the mention was given there, I think by one of the comments you read out, to the Jimmy Savile case. This is a very different sort of case to that. But again, the issue is the BBC effective at investigating allegations of wrongdoing within its own organisation? And what would it do if that happened again? I think that's the question that Tim Davie, the Director General, has got to answer now.
But if you look at the Dyson report and read it from cover to cover, as many of us have, then you would say, yes, the BBC is good at investigating things when they go wrong.
Well, I don't think you can draw that conclusion, because Tony Hall, who was then sort of managing director of news at the BBC, he led a personal investigation into it.
Yes, sorry, I beg your pardon, Mr. Collins. I didn't mean Tony Hall's investigation back then, which, as the Dyson report said, was woefully inadequate. I mean the Dyson report was commissioned by the current Director General. It was an independent report, and it's highlighted the many failings from all those years ago.
Exactly right. And that report was commissioned on the back of a news investigation published by the Mail on Sunday. Tim Davie did the right thing to have an independent review. So I think the question should be, if a serious allegation like this comes up again, or if a whistleblower comes forward with serious information again, would it be handled in this way? Would an outside individual, a law firm or an independent body be brought in to lead an investigation? So it's not BBC line managers investigating people in their own departments. Yeah. And I think that's what we need now. And I think what Tim Davie should really say is what he thinks the best policy should be for these serious issues when they're investigated in the future. Should it be done externally, and in which case by who? And I think that's what we need to know.
A mid-term review of the BBC Charter is due next year. What are the risks there for the BBC, bearing in mind what Dyson has said?
Well, I think in terms of structures and processes, that's why I think Tim Davie needs to set out how the BBC would handle allegations like this in the future. Because, I mean, you go back historically to it, you'd say what happened was they failed to investigate and they threw the whistleblowers under the bus. The people who were punished at the time were not Martin Bashir. It was the people that came forward with the evidence of his wrongdoing. And indeed, they were briefed against in the media at that time as well. So how would it be handled differently? Because I see some similarities here between the initial investigation Tony Hall led, the way in which the BBC failed to treat, I think, seriously soon enough the allegations around Jimmy Savile, even in the way that women at the BBC were treated when they came forward with concerns about equal pay. I don't think the BBC has a good track record of making it a safe place for whistleblowers to speak out and to properly and rigorously investigate things when they go wrong. So I think in the Charter Review is a good point, I think, or maybe ahead of the Charter Review, for the Director General to set out what he thinks the processes should be in the future.
I just want to ask you one more question, if I may, Mr. Collins. Prince William suggested in that calm but angry statement last night that the narrative that has been established about his mother's life is false because of the way that interview was obtained, and that the BBC somehow needs to address that now. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think it's. I mean, he will know. In the same way as Earl Spencer on Panorama last night said he thought that the interview set in train the events that ultimately led to Diana's death. I think what was at heart here is Princess Diana was put in a very exposed position, and was that right? What sort of real understanding was there of what they were putting her through, and indeed the methods that have been used to get her to do that interview, and the impact that information should be given, some of it false, would have had on her own thought processes about what she wanted to say. So I think it's totally understandable that Prince William and indeed Earl Spencer have raised these concerns, which again I think makes the issue here very serious.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Damien Collins. A ceasefire between Israel and the Palestinian militant group Hamas has ended 11 days of fighting. The Egyptian brokered truce has been welcomed by leaders around the world, including US President Joe Biden. Courtney Bembridge has this.
There were celebrations on the streets of Gaza City after the ceasefire came into effect in the early hours of the morning. It brings to an end 11 days of bombardment, in which more than 240 people have died, mostly in Gaza. Hamas is the militant group that rules there, and this was its reaction to the truce.
I say that today this battle stops, but Netanyahu and the whole world should know that our hands are on the trigger, and we will continue to ramp up the capabilities of this resistance. And we will tell Netanyahu and his army, if you come back, we will come back.
The office of the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the ceasefire was mutual and unconditional, but some Israelis in Tel Aviv were doubtful about how long it will last.
The ceasefire is good for humanitarian reasons, to let civilians relax a little bit on both sides. I'm skeptical, though, that it will really be kept for a while. I don't think Israel has achieved much. I mean, there are no agreements about the future, nothing.
This ceasefire won't last 8 hours. They will start shooting gas rockets again.
The US President Joe Biden welcomed the ceasefire, which was brokered by Egypt.
We've held intensive high-level discussions, hour by hour, literally. Egypt, the Palestinian Authority, and other Middle Eastern countries, with the aim of avoiding the sort of prolonged conflict we've seen in previous years when the hostilities have broken out.
Cairo is sending 2 delegations to monitor the situation as the world's attention now turns to maintaining peace. This was the message from the United Nations.
I stress that Israeli and Palestinian leaders have a responsibility beyond the restoration of calm to start a serious dialogue to address the root causes of the conflict.
The latest conflict is the 4th big war between Israel and Hamas since 2008. And many fear it won't be the last.
The reality at this point is the gaps between the Israelis and the Palestinians on this conflict and how to resolve it are extremely wide, both substantively, psychologically, and I would say politically.
For now, though, both sides are claiming a victory. Courtney Bembridge, BBC News.
Just gone 9:45 this Friday morning, here are the headlines on BBC News. Prince William launches a scathing attack on the BBC, saying his mother, Princess Diana, was failed not just by one rogue reporter, but by BBC leaders who looked the other way. Prince Harry says the ripple effect of a culture of exploitation ultimately took his mum's life. In a documentary with Oprah, he said he drank too much and took drugs to deal with losing his mother. A ceasefire between Israel and the Palestinian militant group Hamas comes into effect, ending 11 days of violence which killed nearly 250 people, mostly on the Palestinian side. An investigation's underway in Swansea following what police have described as large-scale disorder in the city last night. Videos posted on social media show people setting fire to cars and rolling them down a hill on a residential street. Officers say the incident may have started out as a vigil to a local person who'd recently died, but then escalated into violence. A COVID variant first identified in India and spreading in parts of the UK is continuing to cause concern in the northwest of England. Bolton is leading the way with the number of cases, with the area far above the national average. In the past week, a number of vaccination centres have been set up to try to control the spike in infections, and health officials are targeting around 10,000 people who are eligible, but have yet to come forward. Let's talk now to Dr. Helen Wall, who is leading the town's vaccine rollout. So how do you get these missing 10,000 people to come forward to have a jab?
Thank you. Good morning. I think we're working really hard at finding these people because the issue that we've found is not really vaccine hesitancy as such. In the majority, it has been removal of barriers to access for the vaccine. And this is what we're really targeting now by bringing the vaccine sites into the communities, which we were doing for some time before the rate started to rise because we were aware of slightly lower uptake in these areas. But we've really done a massive push now on this over the past week, and we're continuing to do so.
Right, so you mean you've got vaccination centres on streets, in supermarket car parks, where people actually live, but there's still 10,000 missing people?
We have, in the last week, vaccinated an excess to what our normal vaccination sites are running of around 10,000 people. We are just running the data through to see which of the 10,000 people in that particular area we have captured, because what we've done since the Indian variant started to rise is we have allowed people who are eligible within those areas who work, live or study. So the 10,000 will not be purely people who were living in that area before that. So I'm confident that we've captured a lot of those people, but there's still a considerable way to go. And we're now planning to move out into other parts of Bolton, where the 10,000 that we mentioned was purely in the BL3 area of Bolton, which was the area which was initially of high concern with the variant from India. But we're now moving out our testing processes and therefore our vaccination surge into other parts of Bolton.
And those people who have come forward this week in particular, are they people who, yes, they were eligible for the jab and they just haven't come forward until now?
A large majority of them, having spoken to people on the site, having been on the site over the past week, a large majority were indeed in the cohorts 1 to 9 in particular. So that's anybody over the age of 50 or who've been shielding or clinically vulnerable, and they've chosen to come forward. Now, I think in part that's because of the push that we've been doing locally, but also because people are really worried in the town now because of the significant rise in cases that we have.
I mean, we've been told by experts in the last week that we cannot vaccinate our way out of this. Obviously, it helps massively, but we've still got to do the washing of hands, the social distancing and all the rest of it. Presumably that's a bit harder, though, with restrictions being eased in England back on Monday.
It certainly is. We Bolton have been in lockdown for the majority of the last 15 months, if we're honest. There were about 3 weeks in July where we weren't under any form of restriction. So Bolton people are really tired now and tired of restrictions. So the lockdown has come for many in Bolton as a welcome situation, the easing of that. But indeed, we're doing not just a push on the vaccinations, but we've got boots on the ground, leafleting, knocking on doors, doing a lot of work within our community and our community engagement to ensure that people are supported in not just accessing the vaccine, but allowing them to be encouraged to go for a test even without symptoms and to follow all the advice around, as you say, hands, face, space, and isolating if they are symptomatic.
OK, so can I just be clear, Dr. Wall, how many people do you think are still to be vaccinated? It's not 10,000 because you've done some of those. How many is it?
I would hazard a guess in that particular area of BL3, we have done at least 50% of those 10,000, possibly more. But when we quoted the 10,000 figure, that was just for that one area of Bolton. We have about 4 or 5 areas in Bolton that are high deprivation. And we are now having to expand our efforts into those areas alongside the expansion of the surge testing in order to capture those people as well.
Can you add it up for us in those different postcodes then, ish?
Sorry, what was the question?
So it's 5,000 in BL3, but there's 3 or 4 or 5 other postcodes as well with people yet to be done. How many in total do you reckon?
When we've run some figures earlier in the week, I suspect we're looking at around 30,000 people in total across the town.
Who have been eligible and have yet to come forward?
Not all of those will be in cohort 1 to 9, but as you're aware, the numbers are escalating every week on week because as the age limit comes down, this week we've gone down to age 36, 37. We're due to go down again into the earlier 30s. Each time that age limit comes down, these areas have high numbers of young people in them because they're areas that are particularly close to the town centre. And I think that's the same in most towns, that the further out of the town centre you go, the more elderly population we have, so the more eligible people we've had for a long time for vaccination. As we come further into the town centres where we have high areas of deprivation, we have much more younger people, and therefore every time we think we're just hitting those figures, more people are added to that eligibility list. So Understood. We have a massive us.
Yeah. Good luck. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Helen Wall, who was talking to us from Bolton. Let me bring you this news. Spain is going to allow you in to Spain without a negative swab test from May the 24th. So you will not need to show a negative test, which is quite extraordinary. That is just according to an order published in the State Gazette today. Spain is going to allow travellers from Britain and also Japan into Spain without a negative PCR test. As you know, we're told not to go to Spain on holiday. We can only go, the Prime Minister says, we should only go for essential reasons, or extreme reasons was the phrase he used the other day. We shouldn't be going to Spain on holiday. Just go for essential reasons like a funeral or seeing a relative who's very ill. And if you do go to Spain, you have to isolate at home when you come back, because Spain is on the amber list. But yeah, Spain says it will allow you in to Spain without a negative PCR test from May the 24th, which is next week. Now, a report on the government's compensation scheme for victims of the Windrush scandal says the Home Office is still failing to pay claimants quickly enough. The National Audit Office also says many of the people thought to be eligible for payments have yet to apply. Right, it's time for a full weather forecast. When is it going to stop raining and blowing the wind? Here's Matt.
Hello. I'll start with a quick reminder that it is late May, not October. It certainly feels like that out there at the moment. The view from space shows this massive swirl of cloud, more reminiscent of a storm crossing the UK in October than during late spring. Bands of rain swirling around it, strongest the winds to the southern edge, and across southern counties of England, widespread gales this afternoon through the English Channel, winds touching 50, maybe 60 miles an hour at times too. But at least here there'll be a little bit of sunshine and 1 or 2 showers. Sunshine too to the far north and northwest of Scotland, but for the rest, staying cloudy, outbreaks of rain coming and going, most persistent through parts of Wales, northern England, and through Murray, Aberdeenshire and Angus. Risk of some minor flooding for 1 or 2. A cold feel here with gale force winds coming in from the northeast, and for all temperatures way down and where we expect for this stage in late May. Now into this evening and overnight, as our air of low pressure starts to push its way off into the North Sea, northerly winds will start to develop for all of us, taking colder air that little bit further south. Chilliest conditions though, where drier weather will be into the morning. Western Scotland, Northern Ireland with a little bit of morning sunshine, cloudy elsewhere with some outbreaks of rain. But compared to today and indeed yesterday, Saturday looking a bit more optimistic for those hoping to head out. Fewer showers around and the winds nowhere near as strong. But by Sunday, after a bright start, more rain will return. Let's take a look at Saturday first of all. Best of morning sunshine, Western Scotland, Northern Ireland, brightening up across other western areas, 1 or 2 showers. Cloudy start through eastern Scotland, England and Wales. Most of the cloud will break up. The strong winds down eastern coast will slowly start to ease. And many of you actually have a dry and sunny afternoon, but there'll be a few showers dotted around and through parts of the middle and southern England. If you do catch a shower, there's a chance it could be heavy and thundery. Again, another cool day, even though those breeze is starting to ease. A rather chilly night then through Saturday night into Sunday, and then the next low pressure system gets ready to swing its way in. So eastern areas start off dry and bright. Some will stay dry all day long. Best chance being the far northeast of Scotland with the sunshine. Clouding over though for most. Heavy rain to begin with, turning to sunshine and showers across Ireland. That heavy rain spreads in across parts of Scotland, Wales and the western half of England by the end of Sunday afternoon, heading its way towards eastern coast through the evening. A chilly day for all with strong winds, although not as strong as today. Remaining blustery into Monday with a mixture of sunshine and showers, but through Tuesday and beyond, temperatures will lift just a little bit. Bye for now.
The BBC World Service is a powerhouse. It's the world's radio station. How cool is that?
There were many occasions like the landing on the moon, which I learned about through the BBC World Service.
The BBC has provided joy, hope and grace all over the world, which is really rare, and I think that's a beautiful thing.
It's no exaggeration to say the BBC World Service has become the international watchword for quality broadcasting.
Bringing the world closer. The BBC World Service.
The BBC World Service has always been something that has just given me a sense of anchoring wherever you go, that it's always accessible.
BBC World Service has been my compass. We need news that give us facts that doesn't distort our world.
I want news, I want science, I want facts, giving me the information so that I can make up my own mind.
The World Service definitely keeps people informed, and I love it.
Bringing the world closer. The BBC World Service.